Hi, I'm Leanne Ely. I'm a nutritionist, a New York Times best-selling author, and some people even say I'm a life coach. I started the Daily Dish Show to share my story, my truth, and my journey to vibrancy, and to inspire others to do the same. Because it's all about grit, perseverance, and finding a way despite the odds. It's about embracing the whole woman, not just the parts that are easy to love, and feeding her heart, mind, body, and soul. But I found that this isn't just my story, it's your story too. It's go time. This is the Daily Dish. So let's talk about this idea of influence. We have been talking all week about being under the influence and how many things influence us, especially our words, our body chemistry, the way we think, all of the people around us, our job, the atmosphere, our surroundings, everything is an influence in our lives. And if we think we're not influenced, we'd be best to take a step back and do an analysis, because we are all heavily influenced by the people in our lives, by the things around us, and by the words that we say or don't say, even by the things that we're thinking, the food that we're eating, the exercise we're doing or not doing. All of that is going to have an influence on your life. And it's funny. It's just like food. Food doesn't care. Food is giving you your body information on what to do next. Is what it does. It's not a mere calorie and that's it. No. It's nutrients or lack of. It is helps to cool inflammation or cause it. It's very black and white when it comes to food. There's really no gray food. Same with influence. There's really no gray influence. When we were, as young moms, we were concerned about the kids our kids spent time with, because we knew there was going to be an influence. And as much as our kids say, oh, no, they just do their thing, I do mine. Not true. We're all heavily under the influence of each other and everything else that comes into our world. But also understand that you are an influence. That you have, if you are a mother of young children, they are watching everything that you do. Everything. If you are the mother of teens, they're watching everything that you do. Even the mother of young adults, they're still watching. And they're still evaluating. And they're still wondering, is this what I want to do next? Is this do I want in 30 years, do I want to be like this mom? Like my mom? They're looking. Same with your elderly parent, How are you handling that? How are you doing that? With love and utmost care? Or are you just like, let's just get through this, grin and bear it kind of a thing? And that tender, older version of your mom or dad, they're picking it all up. Believe me or believe it. Even if they seem like they're not all there, they're still picking it up. And I know that the selflessness of taking care of an elderly parent it's tough business. But I just want you to recognize that there is an influence that you have with that elderly parent as a caregiver. There's an influence that you have as a boss, as a manager, at work. You have influence. You have influence. And we don't often think of ourselves that way, do we? Do you just think about what kind of an influence am I going to, give today? Do you really? I don't never think that way. But yet your influence is all over the place, and it is written on the quality of your life. And it comes out in what it is that you're doing. That's how influence rolls. That's how it shows up. And Dale Carnegie, if you remember, wrote a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. It was written, get this, in 1936. That was 85 years ago. My mother was 3 years old when he wrote that book. That's how I look back on that. 85 years ago, this book was written. But the lessons from this book are still pertinent today. Influence is a thing that we need to talk about. And I remember when I very first had that book, I got a book, and I have it around here somewhere. I got that book, and it was just one of those, like dime store romance novel size. I forget, it's called mass paperback. My first book, Saving Dinner, was done in mass paperback in a response to it selling a lot of copies. And so they did, I don't know why they did it, but they did that and put them in drugstores all over. And then that's ended and it's still in the trade paper. This is way back in 2002, by the way, which isn't that so funny how many years ago that was? Almost 20 years ago. But the lessons are still pertinent in this book because the lessons are all about influence. And even though I looked at that and I was thinking, oh, this is all manipulation tactics. That's what this is. That was my first impression just from the title of how to win friends and influence people, how to fake people out and how to like hypnotize them and be all that was my first impression. Then I read the book. Did anybody here read the book? It's a good book, even though some of the language might seem a little antiquated and some of it is a little drawn out. You know, the examples can be a little bit drawn out, a little bit, tough to read. Since then, there's been rewrites and updates and what have you. But as you can imagine, it sold millions of copies. And Dale Carnegie, of course, basically is the father of personal development, really. Well, probably other people are too, but this is the whole thing. But I think that what this book does, it answers your life's quest for influence, because don't you want to have influence in your circle of friends? Don't you want to have influence on your children? Don't you want to have influence in your family? Well, of course you do. We all do. It's not, getting to the place of manipulation and ooga booga hypnotism and woo woo, whatever. That's not what this is about. It's about understanding that you already have influence. Now, how do you want? You want to tighten that up and make it a good influence? It's understanding that, we do have to win our friends. We do. I mean, we don't just simply show up and say, be my friend, and then it helps. Then it just happens. Being a friend is much more than a contractual, agreement. You do this and I'll do that. It's way beyond that. I mean, I always say that understand when you do body clutter buddy stuff, that's a contractual arrangement. I'm doing this so that I can be accountable. If you end up friends after the fact, neat, cool, the best. And it can happen. And we've got a lot of that happening in the Hot Milk Sprint group. But honestly, at the end of the day, you start out with just this contractual arrangement kind of a thing. But that's not how friends are won with this contractual thing. Friends are won by just basically being your very best self and showing up and being that person and being the listener and being that woman. That's what it is. Hey there, Flynn. So Deborah said she's read the book several times. It's a good book. I strongly suggest everybody read it. It's a quick read. It won't take very long, but it is well worth your time. But I pulled together some lessons from How to Win Friends and Influence People, because this is a classic read. It really is a classic read. And I think there's some important things for us to take a peek at. And the first one is that complaining, criticizing, and condemnation will never get you to the place of having friends and influencing people. As a matter of fact, that's how you repel them. Nobody wants to be around a whiner. Nobody wants to be around somebody who's critical of everything around them, because as soon as you're not in the room, they're going to be criticizing you too. Nobody wants to be around somebody who's constantly condemning. It's a downer. Can we just agree to that? It is a complete downer. And this is what Dale Carnegie says. Any fool can criticize, condemn, or complain, and most fools do, right? But what I want you to know is that complaining has been scientifically proven to shrink your brain. Literally, it will shrink your brain. I don't know about you. I don't need any brain shrinkage. Complaining is low vibe. And we've talked, extensively about high vibe and low vibe and the difference. The difference. If you're down here in the dumps and in a really bad place, you know what that feels like. It feels low and hard and sluggish and just moving through, like you're moving through cement, versus when you're feeling happy and joyful and excited and ready to go and on top of things and motivated and creative and all of that, boy, oh boy, you're on fire and everybody can pick that up. Well, we don't want to be in the complaining, criticism, and condemnation place. Low vibe, total low vibe. And no, that is a repellent to influence and repellent. And it pushes back on what it is that you want. It doesn't bring people in, or if it does, it's people doing more of the same of that. This is not how you elevate and be part of the rising tide, by the way. This is how you bring things down. So, and I really look at it this way, but maybe, I don't know, but criticism and condemnation really are the result of complaining all the time. Anybody want to be around a complainer all the time? Anybody want to listen to the complaining? What do you say to your kids when they're whining all the time? Stop whining. I used to take a paper bag and say, it sounds to me like you got a bad case of the whinies. And I'd hand them the paper bag and just have them use it to put all their complaints in. Of course they were little. And just whatever it is, just get it out, because no one wants to hear that. What that just is saying? Yes, your voice is important, and yes, but maybe you haven't learned how to use it well yet. And there are times where criticism is important, constructive criticism in a way that doesn't rip somebody down. But there is never a case where condemnation should be on the table. We don't condemn anyone. Condemnation is just absolute, it's shame based is what it is. And complaining is just unable to really deal with your stuff. Maybe what we do instead of complaining is think, what can I do differently that will get me a different result? That's what we need to do. But it's any fool can criticize, but we're not fools here, ladies. We're wise women. Wise women go above this noise. Number 2, praise abundantly. Anybody feel good when somebody says, hey, way to go, atta girl, you've done a good job? Everybody does well. And I don't care if you think, praise just isn't, if you're skimpy with your praise. Don't be skimpy. Be lavish with your praise. And can I just ask one thing too, please, for all of us? Can we make it less about what you look like and more about who you are? We need that. Less about the grades, less about the performance, and more about who you are. One of the things that really laid heavy on my heart as a mom of young kids, I used to always say to my children, I would love to catch them doing something lovely. And I would say, I love how kind you are, with the animals, because we had, they grew up on this little farm thing. I love how kind you are. You're a good, encouraging friend. And sometimes I would say, boy, that's smart thinking right there. But being able to catch your child doing something great and doing something praiseworthy, make it happen. Make that happen. I think we all need that. And I will tell you, even though you might be lavishing your little children like that, you're going to see that come back. It's going to pay off, and you will see them in their little circle of friends doing something kind for another. It's just amazing. Yeah, catch them being good is exactly right, Nancy. Number 3 is say their name. Remember, we've talked about how important your name is, and that it is a name above all names. And I'm not saying that in a blasphemous name, that you hear. This is the name that you hear above all the names. It's true. Your name you hear, and you immediately hear when you're in a crowded room, in a crowded, party situation. This is what it is. You say their name. So when you say, I used to do this, eyeball to eyeball, get down on their level, really important with little children. And I would say, Caroline, I love how you're such an encouraging friend. I love the way I love how much you love your cats, or whatever the situation was. But just what we're trying to do is build that quality and the qualities that are within our children. And this is something that can, this we're talking about children here, but how much can we do that with our friends? You know, I love that you're such an encourager. I love the way you, and I say this to Mark all the time, and I have to write this down. This is in my, by the way, because it doesn't come naturally to me. Some people it's just really natural. For me, I've had to work on this, and I have it in my Take Back Your Life journal to be an encourager and to be an appreciator every single day. So I have to write down. I write down my appreciation or my gratitudes every day, and usually one of them has something about Mark in it because he's the one I see most of the time. And I want to make sure that he knows how appreciated he is. So I think of, something that's different than the last time. Like, he just takes care of things. And I let him know how much I appreciate that he takes care of things without me having to ask him. That it's wonderful. And I appreciate what a partner he is because he's such a partner and a good husband. I can say that too after a week. So these are things that we need to be able to put out there, that those words, that their name, use their name. It makes them feel powerful and important and special by using their name. Eyeball to eyeball. Number 4, be real, be genuine, be interested in others 100%. Ask those questions. And here you go. I've got one for you. Listen. Spend 75% of your time listening and asking questions genuinely about the other person, not waiting for a breath so that you can interject your advice or your thoughts or whatever, especially somebody who is just saying, can I just talk? I just need someone to hear me. They don't need advice. They don't need help. They don't need someone coming alongside unless they're asking for it specifically. And it's really hard to shut up and just kind of, listen. But I'll tell you what, that is an influence and a half. And it's saying, I love you. I appreciate you. I'm here for you. And I can absorb all the things. Just go ahead. It's not dismissive. And I'll tell you what, I've been dismissed. You have too. With friends who are just like, oh, it's no big deal. Just do this. And, oh, I can't believe, we've all been in that position. I remember one time I was living in Weddington, North Carolina. I was on the phone with someone I felt like was just like my bestie of all besties. And she dismissed me and told me, you just need to, and you are, and blah, blah. And I will tell you, shutting someone down like that, that's not love. That's not care. That's just, I don't have time for you. And even if it's hard, even if it's difficult, we have the ability to love greater and to be a bigger influence than that. It's just hard to do. But it's something that if we make it our objective to do, then we can be a better friend and be a better influence. Not only are we going to win friends, we're going to be friends. Number 5 rather, is to be a charmer. Okay, so I know this sounds really funny because it sounds like, charm your way into something, but let's look at the definition of charming is giving delight or arousing admiration. I did charming your way. We've all been, gobsmacked by, flattery and bad men. Maybe not all of us. Maybe there's a lot of women out there who are smarter than that, but I wasn't one of them. But I've been in those unfortunate shoes, and happy to say that I got through all of that. But being able to give someone delight and being able to be their friend and to be totally present and to arouse admiration, even just for one little thing, why not? This is how we help to influence and keep people in our lane. And it's also how we manage and help them to become better people too, by showing up in our best light. That's what being charming is all about, I love that. I think it's sweet to be charming. And, charming is just it's just a quality. It's not like a deception kind of a thing. That's how I've always looked at it before. But after kind of studying this a little bit, I looked at it from a very different perspective, very different point of view, and that's what I came up with. Number 6 is personal responsibility. For heaven's sakes, own your life, own your mistakes, and admit you're wrong. Nobody can criticize that. They can, if they want to, they can come back and they can dismiss you, they can do whatever. But at the very end of the day, when you're saying, you know what, hey, here I am, and I really blew it, and I was short with you, I did this, or I shouldn't have, or I should have just said, hang out, let's have a cooling off period, let's discuss this, because this is the most important thing, our relationship here. That's what we need to do. This also, the science tells us this reveals stability and a healthy sense of ego, a healthy sense of self. Listen, none of us are perfect. Surprise, none of us. But we need to strive for excellence and not perfectionism. And not perfect. Perfect is not the side of glory. And I will also say, too, that the inability to admit you're wrong is because you're a perfectionist, end of sentence, period. Truth. The inability to admit you're wrong means that you see yourself as perfect, that you see yourself as unwavering, and that you see yourself as just, the whole world revolves around me and my belief system. And I'll tell you what, sister, your bias is showing. We all have them. We all have it. Why can't we all just own our stuff and take responsibility for our stuff? We all need to. Once we do, and once we start to, take responsibility, once we start to admit our mistakes and ask for and seek forgiveness, we put ourselves in a completely different place. And we also put influence into that relationship, if it's accepted, of course. And that's the whole deal. And this is a game changer. I don't know if you've been around people like that, but I hope you can find them, because it makes all the difference in the world, and it changes the whole dynamic of what your relationship is. Whether it's a friendship, whether it's a relationship with your significant other, your relationship with your children, it all changes. And it clears out the resentment, and it clears out the clutter. It's really an amazing thing. Number 7, this really piggybacks on this other thing, this idea of winning arguments. Carnegie said the way to win any argument is to avoid it. He said a woman against her will is of the same opinion still. Here's the deal. Even if you convince and work your way into getting someone on your side, why? What's the point of that? And, it's just like we see this all the time in media, don't we? And in the news, and just all this huge divide in us as Americans. I mean, it's pretty crazy. And especially in today's social media. But here's the thing. We might be able to temporarily woo someone over to us. Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. I get it. But why all that energy expenditure into that? How about, well, let's just agree that we disagree. And so who cares? Move on, because you are going to be uniquely biased. I am going to be uniquely biased. And so is everybody else on this planet. That doesn't mean that the world revolves around you and your opinions and that you're 100% right. How do we deal with that? Like, think for a minute. I'll use something that I know could stir the pot. How about we talk about baptism, sprinkle or dunk, grown up or infant? And don't you dare anybody put a comment in here what the truth of it is. The thing is, this is for a millennia. This has been something that people have discussed and had new religions and drawn the lines of new sects of Christianity. It's crazy. But the interpretation of whatever it is that needs to be interpreted, whether it's medical data or science or religion or politics or whatever it is always going to be uniquely looked at from your lens with your bias. And I'm going to tell you what, we are all biased. So why go to the place of argument and trying to win and trying to influence and trying to one-up somebody with callous political memes, especially in social media? All of this kind of stuff, guess what? The world doesn't revolve around you and your opinion or mine or anybody else's. I don't care who they are, right? We got to get over this if we're going to go to the place of peace and living together in peace. It just really destroys me to see what this country's become and how divided we all are. And it's because we don't have any respect for one another. It's always ripping and shredding the other person to make ourselves feel better. That's bias. And it is not in the name of good influence either. It's in the lowest common denominator. And that's what I have to say about that. Number 8 is we have to start with common ground. We have a common ground, don't we? Don't you think we all have a common ground? If I were to ask you, what is our common ground with all these women together here? What is our common ground? Well, that's the place that we need to start. If we have something that we need to take, that we need to take apart and we need to fix, we have to start in the place of common ground. Common ground is if you're married and in a very, a committed relationship. Your common ground is that you want that committed relationship to stay. You got to start there. You don't just dive into the place where you're having problems. You pronounce your commitment again. We committed to each other. We're committed. This is what we want. And these are the things that we have. And this is what our life is about. And here's the issue that we have to deal with. But let's keep our common ground in mind. This is how it's true for anything. This is our relationship. This is our friendship. This is our relationship with our kids. This is how, I mended a relationship that I had with a family member. This is our common ground. And from there, that's the only place. Okay. That's the only place that you can go, is that place. Start with common ground. Number 9 is plant the seed instead of growing their gardens for them. We have a tendency to want to take over and say, I'll just do it for you. I'll just do this. I'll do that. And boy, it's really easy to do that, especially with your kids. Isn't it true? We want to do for them. I have to keep reminding myself, I have 30-year-old children. I have a 30-year-old son and a 31-year-old daughter. I don't need to do for them. They need to do for themselves. I can take them along. I can do things as treats, but and have a fun time with them. But they need to do for themselves too. I'm on the sidelines now. I am no longer actively parenting my children. Cool. Let them do their thing. If they come to me, the sweetest words I have ever heard, and it's come from my son more than my daughter too, by the way, just FYI, is, Mom, I need your advice. And I'll tell you what, I marked the day on my calendar. My son asked me for my advice because it was so cool. But that's planting seeds so that later on, that they're going to come to you because of your influence on their lives. And they're going to ask you for that time. I love that. And number 10 is, it's so easy. Make people feel important for who they are because they are important. Remember how I say to you that you are fearfully and wonderfully made and that you're here on purpose and for purpose? So is everybody else. So is everybody else. It's not just you, it's everyone else. And if that person is in your life, it's on purpose and for purpose. How can you make peace with that? How can you bring an influence into their lives that's better than maybe what was going on before? Well, it's from personal responsibility. We talked about that. But it's from all of these things because they all work together for our good and for the good of humankind and womankind. This is how we are a part of the rising tide. Remember, the rising tide lifts all boats, not some, all. And I'm calling you to this influence. I'm calling you to being the very best version of yourself by taking good care of yourself, by loving yourself up enough that you are going to be this woman who dares to be a part of the rising tide, that dares to get rid of the stuff that is no longer bringing them joy, that's no longer helping with this message of influencing people in such a good way. I say that we're all called to this kind of a life, that we're all called to win friends, to influence people, and to be the very best versions of ourselves. Have the guts to analyze yourself and analyze what's going on, and have the guts to go through and say, this needs to go, this needs to be developed. This is how you learn to be more appreciative of the people around you. This is how you learn to be the very best version of yourself. It's an ongoing thing, and a battle too at that, because it's really easy to fall back into the complaining, into the whining and the Netflix and just not doing. Easy. What's harder is deciding and making a stand and a stance for living a life of integrity, of influence, and of a better life and a better way. Like Diana Nyad said, there is a way, find a way. We can all do this. What do you think of that idea? Let's do it. Peace be with you.
Thank you for joining me today. You can find me on TikTok for daily tips to help support your most vibrant life. And remember, you are the author of your own story. Until next time.